All right, welcome everyone. It is Tuesday, July 13th to our July OSM community call. Please remember this call is under the CNCF Code of Conduct. If you're not familiar with that, the Code of Conduct MD is on the repo. I'll summarize it. If you are respectful to one another, you'll be okay. We got a pretty decent agenda, but before I do that, I want to open it up for if there's anyone new to the community that wants to introduce themselves. And if not, we will continue on. Okay, all right, so let's get into the agenda items. This first one is for me. It's just basically going over the OSM milestone. I'll go ahead and show our project board here. So in fact, let me go back to the code. So we are actually, we released v.0.9.1, and some of the highlights in it include high availability on the OSM control plane with support for multiple replicas, auto-scaling, and pod distribution budgets. We have the ability to ignore ingress resources using a label. And we also have support for global and pod scope inbound port exclusions to exclude specific ports and sidecar traffic interception. So that's where we are at with this latest release. I don't know if any other maintainers want to highlight anything that I have missed. All right, take silence as we're good to go. All right, so that is a roadmap review. This next one is really just a community update. As many know, we have been working on multi-cluster features. I see you're on the call. I don't want to steal any thunder. Would you like to update the community on where we're at with multi-cluster?
Yes,
sounds good. Very high level. Yeah, go for it.
Hi all, this is Dalian. So we have been working on multi-cluster OSM. And maybe I'll take over and share my screen real quick to kind of show where we are. Can I take over the screen and share?
Yeah, I believe Bridges, the host, Bridges just has to give you the rights to do so.
I was going to walk folks real quick through.
Done.
Yep.
Great.
Take it away.
Thank you.
I'll go ahead and stop sharing on my side.
All right, friends. So you're looking at the design doc of multi-cluster OSM. I'm going to start with that. So as you can see, we created this doc back in April of this year, and this is focusing on open service mesh. So we wanted to make it a multi-cluster. We want to make sure that we have the ability to install OSM on 2 separate Kubernetes clusters and have those communicate. There's a few different kind of solutions that we're providing with that. So we're trying to first, with that, we're going to create fault tolerance, and we're also going to add capacity to a given cluster. This is quickly summarized by this graph. You have 2 clusters. You have the store service, which imagine that cluster X maybe ran out of capacity. We need to add more pods to the store service. Well, we're going to add store service pods to cluster Y. And so that provides extra capacity and failover just in case one of the clusters starts losing compute or something is failing. So this is the design doc. Now, I'm going to mention that this design doc is not the same as multi-cluster SMI. There is a reference to multi-cluster SMI at the bottom of this doc. The goal here is to implement multi-cluster in OSM, learn from it. This document, multi-cluster OSM, it proposes a CRD. That CRD then is going to get promoted. It's going to get proposed back to SMI. Now for SMI, for service mesh interface, we have a separate doc that's been discussed in the SMI community that's different. And I am personally hoping that all the lessons, like I said, from implementing open service mesh with a custom CRD, all the lessons can get poured into SMI, and then of course, then back from SMI, that CRD that we're going to invent here in SMI is then going to be backported into multi-cluster OSM. All right, with that, I will show you, we've done a ton of work already. Quite a few new contributors joined OSM and helped us. You see there's many multi-cluster PRs. So we've been merging multi-cluster code, many PRs. Is it ready? No, not yet. So it's not quite ready, but we're making huge progress implementing everything described in this design doc. And one of the last PRs, which a great colleague of mine merged, is this multi-cluster demo. So this multi-cluster demo is what's going to allow us to actually configure and run 2 Kubernetes clusters with 2 OSM controllers and exported services. And everything is going to be being kind of started by this bash script. We're not ready yet, like I said. This probably is not going to run everything the way you expect it to, but we're working on that. So this is going to be kind of the last piece that's going to be as part of the demo, which we hope to do sometime soon. So we're going to run this bash script, and like I said, 2 Kubernetes cluster, 2 OSM controllers, and we'll show how one service is going to be scaled across 2 clusters. And so this is kind of where things are with multi-cluster. I look forward to, within the next few community meetings, to start demoing this and showing you how it works. And sincere thanks to all the contributors that have been helping review the design doc, add PRs, review PRs, create this demo. We're going to wire this demo into the CI system so we test multi-cluster. Thank you so much.
Right. Thank you, Dalian. That's been a popular feature. So it's great to see the progress happening with multi-cluster. Okay, so next on the list here is I actually reached out to the Kiali team, and we were, so another feature that we've been asked for is a UI. So let me go ahead and just share out some of the activity around our thought process, and then we'd love to get some feedback from the community about this. As you all know, Kiali is a very popular UI that is used in Istio. And so it's open source as well. And so what we're trying to figure out is if it makes sense for us to extend Kiali beyond Istio. And we're starting to have some early discussions here. So next step, what you see here is I actually went out to the Slack channel and kind of asked about it. They said, hey, go ahead and create a discussion out on the repo, and that's what I did. And we got some feedback, and really they're asking us, I asked about how do we submit an RFC, et cetera. Interesting enough, the first reply was on some earlier discussions where the answer was basically no. Basically, if I could summarize what some of those issues talked about was Kiali is really instrumented specifically for the way Istio emits metrics, et cetera. And so didn't seem like at this point in time, the Kiali team is looking to extend Kiali beyond Istio, but they were supportive to say, hey, if you had some of the engineering cycles to do so, we will definitely consult you and explain how Istio, I'm sorry, not Istio, but how Kiali actually can surface those metrics. So that's one avenue. The other avenue is, could we possibly not specifically have Kiali support OSM, but have Kiali support SMI? So extending the SMI spec, therefore any SMI compliant mesh could benefit from the Kiali UI as well. So that's kind of where we're at. We're going to kind of put up an RFC. Once we get the RFC out there, we'd love to have some comments from the community on which approach they think is best, et cetera, on that. So I'll pause there. Any feedback or any ideas or thoughts about integration with Kiali or OSM? Nope. Okay. We'll take silence as a thinking about it. Oh, I just realized I did not share out the discussion that I had here. Okay. So I think hopefully you can see my screen now. So this is just the discussion portion of the repo, and here's where I'm asking about Kiali integration. So if you want to track this, this is discussion 4166 on the Kiali repo. So again, if you got any questions or want to add to the discussion, please do so from here. Perfect. And I think this leads us into this other item that I wanted to chat about, which is the use of discussions. So I noticed we don't typically do discussions here on the OSM repo, but I'm curious to hear from the community. Do we think that the utilization of discussions could be beneficial to the project? I think if you look at a project board, we kind of have some things specifically in the projects. We have this column here about researching and scoping, and they're all tied to issues, but maybe some of these topics in research and scoping are actually more appropriate to be talked about or tracked as a discussion in the repo. So curious to hear feedback about the utilization of discussions on the repo. How does anyone feel about it? Yay, nay, more work?
I mean, I've stated, oh,
sorry.
go ahead.
I think we have a lot of impromptu discussions on issues or actual PRs. I was wondering if there was any mechanism that kind of links these discussions to those other GitHub objects.
Yeah, I haven't dug deep into this, Kai. I'm assuming that you could link these two issues. I don't see why you can't. You can definitely do some labels. But yeah, let's dig in. I remember this when this feature was came out, but I've never had to touch it or use it. So
Yeah, I think whatever it is we do, we should make sure we're very clear to the community about what we want in terms of, hey, open something as an issue if this, open something as a discussion if that, because otherwise we're going to get a bunch of like tech support questions in the discussions that no one will answer. So as long as we're very clear on the repo about what we expect.
Yeah, we could have something very similar to how to do a PR. We can append to that on, these types of activities or subjects should be mentioned as discussions. I'm sorry, go for it, Dalian.
I just wanted to express 2 cents. I agree with Bridget that adding another way of communicating, could be perceived as noise and adds confusion. At the same time, I really love how this is kind of threaded, and you can respond to people and just kind of there's a bit of a different dialogue versus kind of the really linear way of discussing things and issues. So I like that discussions area, except that it creates a second way of talking about stuff, pluses and minuses, like everything else, I guess.
Yeah, and it looks like you can get a little granular on the discussion. You can actually create your own categories. So I don't know if there's a common theme of categories that are being discussed, but at least it alleviates maybe adding a bunch of issues on the board, maybe issues or more traditional issues and work specific type of items, and then discussions are just in the discussion workspace. But okay, we can figure that out if we feel like this will be something valuable. All right, I'll go ahead and nothing else to share. I'll go ahead and stop sharing here.
So do we agree that we're going to experiment with discussions? We'll launch it and kind of see kind of how the community reacts to that, how good the discussions are. Is that the agreement?
Yeah. Let's we can pilot some discussion and see how it works, see the workflow, and
Great.
then we can make a
Awesome.
determination from that point. Okay. And again, feel free if you got any thoughts about it, just add it to the doc, and we'll consider it. The last thing I want to chat about, and then we're going to have a demo by Kalia here on the OpenShift stuff, is Dapper integration with serverless. So I've been talking to a lot of customers. One thing that keeps coming up is about the use of a service mesh to support multiple runtimes, being such as a VM or serverless. Serverless in this case, something like Azure Functions or AWS Lambda. And started to try to track down, okay, how could we bring functions into service mesh? And I was chatting with a couple of PMs, and we thought one potential way to do it, which might get us to the goal line or the finish line faster, is utilizing Dapper. So if you're not familiar with the Dapper project, they have a concept of these binders or bindings. So you can actually set up these bindings to cloud services such as a PubSub or data services, et cetera. And then you could just call out to the local sidecar API in Dapper, and it'll kind of translate that all to the back end. And so we're thinking we could create a binder for Azure Functions or AWS Lambda or any other type of serverless functions type of service. And then since we already have OSM integration with Dapper, we can kind of just write off Dapper to actually bring serverless workloads into the mesh. So we actually got a call with them later this week, kind of discuss and see what that would look like. But yeah, curious to hear what the community thinks about that. Should we think that that functionality should be something a little more native into OSM? Or should we think about when we extend, runtimes, something like Dapper, helping us bring those features and functionalities to OSM? Any thoughts, opinions? Okay. Well, if you got opinions, just add it to the doc. I think Delian, you'll be on that call with us talking to the Dapper team later this week. So maybe next month on the next OSM call, we can talk about kind of what was said in that meeting and where we can go forward from that. Okay. All right. So that is all the updates. I think, Kalia, if you are ready, I think we are ready to see a demo on OpenShift with OSM.
Sorry, the cat feeder just went off as I unmuted. So that's what that was.
That's fine.
Unfortunate timing. Okay, I'll share my screen.
All right, take it away.
I have like a, oh no, I have to maybe restart my Zoom because let's see. I guess I've never done this before, so I have to authenticate it. Okay, I'll be back in just 1 minute.
Okay. And while she's doing that, we should talk about next steps, next meeting. When's our next meeting, Phil?
Yeah, next meeting will be our August meeting. That's going to be August 10th, same time. And feel free to, I guess we'll go ahead and create the August 10th agenda in the doc. So if you want to speak about something for the next meeting, feel free to go ahead and load up your discussion and or agenda items. We're happy to see demos. So if you got a demo that you think will be something the community would like to see in the next month, please go ahead and add it to the agenda list.
Bridget, could you make me a co-host again, please?
Oh, yes. Yes, done.
Okay, thanks. Sorry about that.
Yeah, no worries. Take it away, Callie.
Cool. So basically in the last two releases, starting with 0.8 and then making some optimizations in 0.9, we've added OpenShift support for OSM, which has been really exciting. So a lot of that work has been making sure that our Helm chart, or how we install OSM, is compatible with the various security restrictions that are inherent in OpenShift. So the biggest one that we have, we're looking at the 0.9 documentation right now, is that since OSM uses an init container to program IP tables, OpenShift requires any containers that program IP tables to have privileged capabilities. So this means that the net admin capability that we currently have isn't sufficient on OpenShift. So we just make that one specific container privileged in our Helm chart. And then we toggle that because we don't want to just have a privileged init container on all distributions of Kubernetes. So that's why when you do an OSM install, it's really important that you have this set enable privileged init container true flag as well. So if you've already kind of done the installation, that's okay, because we have this field toggleable in our mesh config. So what you would have to do is just set that field to true and then restart any of your deployments that are already in the mesh so that they could be scheduled, or so that the init container can run appropriately. And then because we have these privileged init containers in each pod, what you also need to do is add the privileged security context constraint. Security context constraints are OpenShift concepts. So if you're familiar with OpenShift, I'm sure you've used these in the past before. And we've just included this command for reference. So you add the security context constraint to the privileged SCC, and then you just include the service account name, and then service accounts are namespace, so you also include that namespace. So just as an example, I've already deployed our bookstore demo on OpenShift here. So you can see that we have the OSM controller and injector running, and then we also have our book buyer and bookstore pods that are running as well. And you can see that if we tail the book thief, we're getting these connections reset by peer here. So that means that our book thief isn't able to access the bookstore, which is exactly what we wanted. And then if we were to tail the book buyer, we'll see that we are able to access the bookstore from the book buyer application. So we're getting status 200 okay, and these tests are succeeding appropriately. So just to show you how you can run the demo yourself, I just kind of wanted to point out the flags that are important, and it's mostly this deploy on OpenShift flag here. So by default, that's false because we're assuming you're running the demo, on a non-OpenShift cluster. And so here in our env.example file, we document this flag and how to configure it. So by default, it's false. But if you want to run the OSM demo, you're just going to want to make sure that that is true. So we use that flag here, which is where we include that set enable privilege in a container to true. And then we also use that when we deploy our actual application deployments. So this is included for bookstore, book warehouse, book thief, and book buyer, but I'm just showing bookstore because the logic is the same for each of these. So depending on if deploy on OpenShift is true, what we do is we just add the accompanying service account in the correct namespace to the privileged SCC. And then another important thing here is that since the demo does use images that we're building locally, for the automated demo at least, the manual demo does use published images. So this step isn't as important because those images are publicly available. What we also have to do, and this is OpenShift specific, is we have to link that that container registry secret to access those private images. And we just have to kind of link them to the service in the namespace and say that we're allowed to pull them for this deployment. So OpenShift is really centered around increased security and making sure that everything is very locked down. So it was really important to us to have this functionality because we are a service mesh and we are concerned with the security space. So this was this is kind of a long time effort, and we're really happy to be able to provide this to customers now. And then just another quick aside that's important to note is that currently FluentBit is not supported on OpenShift. So that's documented here. And the reason for that is because OpenShift has their own cluster log forwarding mechanisms that we would have to implement in Open Service Mesh, which we currently don't have planned for right now. But if customers are asking for that, that is definitely something that we can revisit. So that was my demo. And if anyone has any questions about that, please feel free to reach out to me. I'm pretty available on Slack or by email. And then also, if you are running into any issues using the manual demo, the automated demo, or even just running your own application workloads in OpenShift, in Open Service Mesh, please raise an issue in the repo. We do have an area OpenShift tag, so we're always looking at these issues and we're definitely looking for ways to improve. Thanks.
Awesome stuff. Thank you, Kaya. As you went through that, I was thinking about some of our earlier discussions, and one scenario just popped up in my mind. So when we talk about multi-cluster, will we ever be able to support I don't know the correct term, a heterogeneous multi-cluster, meaning some version of a compliant Kubernetes install and then OpenShift? I don't know if that's a question for you, Delian.
I don't see why not. I
Okay.
would say any Kubernetes cluster that we can run OSM on, we should be, as long as there's routable IP addresses between the multi-cluster gateways, between the clusters, as long as we can route traffic between them, we should be able to put them in the same virtual mesh.
My only question is how the mesh config works there. Because in that case, then it might be necessary to have privilege in containers across all of the distributions, which isn't ideal. I would rather we be able to scope them per distribution so that we can have least privilege. But maybe that's something that Dalian and I can discuss on the document.
Yeah, sorry to throw that out there, but it was just something I thought about.
Yeah, that's a great question, Phil.
So yeah, let's start tracking that, because I'm assuming at some point that may be a real scenario for a user. All right, thank you again, Kalia. That was really cool to see. That takes us to the end of the agenda. I think we actually went over a couple of minutes, but thanks everyone for showing up. And again, just as a reminder, the next community call will be August 10th. So please go ahead and add any discussion or agenda items to the doc, and we will see everyone in a month. Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you.